Welcome back to the Dreamlet Podcast. Today, I have my friend who is also a teacher.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew, and I am a fourth-year teacher teaching high school math, teaching pre-calculus, AP stats, and AP calculus.
Okay, I didn't even know that you were teaching that many classes.
Yeah, I recently picked up AP calculus, actually.
Nice.
Originally, I was teaching just pre-calculus and AP stats. And the previous teacher who was teaching me AP calculus wanted to kind of switch it up in the grade levels, and then I just picked it up.
Nice. Yeah, so there's going to be a lot to talk about. But Matthew is pretty much, I think, one of my only friends that I know that is like a high school teacher. I feel like we can gain a lot of insights from Matthew, and that's why I brought him on today. And we're primarily going to start off with covering the question of like what do students sort of like misunderstand about teachers? What did I used to misunderstand about them? What do you feel like students misunderstand from the teacher's perspective as well? Something I feel like is not talked about a lot and could be a very like insightful topic. So why don't you start us off, Matthew? What's one of the most important things?
I think one of the ones that I think about immediately when it comes to misunderstandings with students and teachers is that teachers have lives outside of school. Like recently with my coworkers, we've been picking up trivia nights or picking it up with a lot of my old friends. And just telling students like some of these stories about what I do after school. It's not just I just go home and do all my work and continue working and continue planning, continue creating more content. Like it's not like that at all. I have a life.
Yeah.
I like to hang out with friends. I like to make cocktails. Like I drink with friends and stuff. Like there's a lot of things that we do as teachers as well that I feel like students sometimes forget that like, oh, you don't just live, breathe, and die school.
Yeah.
Huh. That's a weird kind of thought for me as a student. And then it comes across, it's like, yeah, no, I got things to do at home. I'm not going to stay here at school. Where sometimes they ask me to like right after school to stay because like, oh, how long are you gonna be here for? Like 5 more minutes because I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna get some food and relax.
Yeah.
But a lot of students forget that, like, oh, I forget that you have somewhere to be, a home to go to, like a family to go to, or maybe even a significant other to go back to.
Yeah.
And it's just funny hearing the students come to that realization randomly during
I remember a time we were hanging out and you happened to see one of your students. This was a while back. And I just thought it was so interesting how I'm like on the other side of it. Because like I remember people would talk about when I was in high school, like, oh, I saw Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. Who. And it's like so interesting to see them outside of class, outside of school. And having it happen like from the other side, it was like, whoa. We're at that age and like
oh yeah.
And also
it's like whoa hold on there.
And also it's just like interesting like to think about it from the other side because definitely everyone has their own life, but you sort of don't really think that way when you're a student. You sort of only see your teacher as a teacher and like nothing else.
It's true because like even when I randomly meet like my really, really old teachers that I had based on like elementary school or even middle school, like sometimes I see them where we're at like a market or like Walmart or something. And I'm always so excited to see them because I spot them out of the blue and it's like, oh, and I still refer to them as like Mr. and Mrs. such.
Yeah.
Like there's still never an instance where I'm on like a first name basis with any of them. And then now it's like, oh, if some of the students see me, which is very, very rare. The fact that I live so far from my work.
Yeah,
I try to kind of make that split, basically.
I have a question for you. Do you feel like seeing your teacher as just your teacher is a good thing? Or do you feel like students should, of course they should understand that their teachers have lives outside of school, but at the same time, like, should they know a little bit about it? Like, is it sacred? Is there just this sacred rule that, oh, teachers should not be talking about their outside lives. They should just primarily be talking about the topic they're teaching, and the students shouldn't actually like try to get to know them, like what they do in real, like outside of school, Like what's your thoughts about that?
I actually think if you were to not like talk to your students and have like very casual conversations with them, that it really makes for a pretty dry relationship for you to have like a student-teacher relation. Like I'm not pushing like, yeah, you got to tell them everything. You don't have to tell them everything. But like you can have great conversations with them about like, hey, how's your weekend? What'd you do? What were you up to? And the students, a lot of times they do ask that in turn. And you're gonna tell them and just like, no, I didn't do anything. Like you're gonna cut it off right there. It sounds so terrible to hold a conversation in that way.
Yeah.
And I really think that being able to talk to the students or tell them stories or like different experiences really helps you build that relationship with them and build that rapport with a lot of them, because I feel like those kind of stories spread to other students. Like they'll tell other people, their friends, their close friends, best friends, classmates, whoever it is, that, hey, you know what, Mr. was actually just doing blah, 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 blah. And I like that a lot more. And that's why I like to tell my own students a ton of stories about like randomly during the lesson. Like it doesn't just have to be content related. Like maybe I'm reading the problem and it just feels like, oh, you know what, that reminds me. This cat, blah, 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 blah. I just start like jumping into this random story that reminded me of.
Right.
And it gets like a laugh going. And sometimes it really changes the dynamic of the class. Like maybe it felt a little bit dry, right? Maybe it felt kind of boring in class. Then all of a sudden we got a story going and it kind of revitalizes the students, kind of gets them out of that mental rut that they might have been in.
Very true. I feel like a lot of the teachers I used to have, the ones that I remember and the ones that I think fondly of, were the ones that told a lot of stories.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes it class way more fun and more enjoyable as a whole experience.
Definitely. But I do think there's perhaps a perception from people thinking, like a perspective, a stance saying teachers shouldn't do that too much because it's not professional, or it's taking time away from the actual learning of the content.
But I in that aspect, I really think that sometimes the teachers, those kind of teachers may focus too much on the actual content instead of really kind of teaching the students and being a model for them of being a person. Right?
Yeah.
Because like in school, you are learning, you're learning the content, you're learning the math, the different foundational subjects to go on to do great things. But at the same time, you're all people, you're all humans, and you're all learning how to interact with one another. And I think that's really one of the important interaction that you want to have with your students, even though they're your students and you're the teacher, like you're the authority in that classroom, because that is your classroom. You're managing the classroom in that way, but you're still teaching them how to be people. And I definitely felt that way when I was student teaching. Actually, my master teacher at the time was telling me that like if I don't even teach any of them math, that's okay with me. I really want to focus on teaching them to be people. And this was like at the middle school level, when it feels like very notorious to be really rowdy students or uncontrollable students and stuff. Like there's a lot of teachers that feel like, oh, I would never teach middle school ever again after having like one semester or even shorter experience, you know? Which is me, but like, because that's how I started off. I started teaching middle school and I was like, dude, this is kind of crazy. And I felt that I need a little bit more maturity. So that's how I moved to high school level. But it definitely, I think that was one of the biggest takeaways that I had from my master teacher, just like teach them to be people.
That's good. I like that concept a lot. Although it is interesting that it's coming from like a math teacher though.
Yeah, it feels weird because it's like, oh, well, it's like, it kind of reminds me of like students asking me, when am I ever going to use this?
Yeah.
And I keep thinking about that a lot. And I think about sometimes trying to come up with like a witty response against them or something just to playfully belittle them sometimes. But like, I think about, well, you're probably not, right? In many instances, if you're probably not going to go into some engineering field, chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, you're probably not going to use this calculus, and that's okay, right? But the way math is taught and the way we do it is really just to kind of focus on how do we think, right? How do we problem solve? How are we using critical thinking skills to get us from point A to point B?
Right.
You know, and I think that's what's really more important. And that's kind of what I try to teach students, that, hey, it's about how we think of it, right? Like we're approached with this problem. What do we know? And that's like one of the things I always ask my students to write in the beginning of like any problem is like, okay, what do we know so far? What do we see? Like what's happening in this problem? And it could be a simple problem like 2x plus 1 equals 5. What do we see here? Right? Like point it out to me. And I always tell them like, be obvious. Just shout out whatever you see. It's like, I see a 1. I see the equal sign.
Sounds like an escape room.
I see the addition. Yeah, exactly. It's true. What do we see? Observe the results, right? And then we figure out what we can do from there. Because especially when it gets to more complicated problems like AP Calc and AP Stats, where the problems are paragraphs, it's like, point it out to me. What is the most important things that I need to know in order to proceed?
Yeah, that's a good approach and good like mentality for how this is actually helping. Because you're right, there's a lot of instances where calculus probably isn't used for a lot of people anymore, but
Oh, for sure.
but the methodology and the mentality, you can use that almost every day if you want.
Yeah, exactly. Or like sometimes even for like the simple concepts in algebra where students think, oh, when am I ever going to use this? And it's like addition and subtraction. It's like, no, any point in time when you're at the market, maybe you're going to get some food. That's addition and subtraction with your bank account, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's so like they just get glossed over. They don't think about that. They think like, oh, it's just money and something's happening with that money. But they don't understand that I could put that whole context in an equation, and now you got your algebra.
Definitely.
Right? And it's just very interesting how, like as teachers, we try to help our students make that connection. You hear that word, real world applications, you know?
Yeah. I have a question for you. Now that I can actually talk to an AP calculus teacher.
Oh, shoot.
It's not a math question. It's more so what I used to do in the past in high school. Because I took both AP calculus, AB and BC. I don't know if it's the same anymore. What I used to do all the time from every single math class, and I also minored in math in college. For me personally, I think math was one of the easier subjects. But what I did was always look at the answer behind the book. And then from there, I try to figure out how to get there from the problem. So it's sort of like reverse engineering it. And then by doing that so much, I eventually just knew how to do it without it, if that makes sense. Do you think that's
totally.
like a valid way of doing it? Or is it like, does it shrink the critical thinking aspect things?
Oh, I think you are hitting it right on the money with the critical thinking, honestly.
Yeah.
Because if you're having trouble with the steps, like you know the steps, but you don't know how to piece it together, like seeing the answer and working backwards is you experiencing using your critical thinking skills to figure out, well, how do I get from point A to point B? How do I get from the question to the answer? And that's actually a really, really great method of doing things. I used to be like that exactly, where it's like, I don't know what this is. Flip, go all the way to the back, see that. It's like, oh, cool. Okay, that's the answer. I'm not just going to write A equals B all of a sudden. Right? It's not going to be like that. But I think sometimes the issues is like, for example, in my own AP calculus classroom, we don't have the textbooks. And that's the weird part. Like, we don't have textbook for like every single student because in general, we're a very small school. It's only our 5th, 6th year in operation.
I see.
And I think at most what we really do have is I push for this for my AP classes is to have prep books for them. That way they have something that they can study with that's really quick and easy. But if they were to have all those textbooks, like I feel like that would definitely be a very, very viable option for a lot of them to study with. And it's actually how I try my best to have them study, because sometimes I give them problem sets like every week for like the AP stats and AP calc classes, trying to kind of mimic the college thing where you just get a problem set a week and you just got to finish it by Friday or something.
Yeah.
And I like to give them the scoring guidelines with it. So they have that with them. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know how to do this one, right? They can look and figure out, okay, that's the answer. And let's say in AP stats, they look at it and they're like, okay, there's some keywords that I missed. And I've seen this multiple times. It's kind of helping them figure out that when a question is asked in this way, this is the kind of answer that they're looking for.
Right.
And I don't want to take that resource away from them, honestly. I will want, like, I understand if it's like, oh, but they could just cheat or something. And it's like, okay, but like you want them to know this stuff, like you want them to study, and I'm trying to build in them those study habits, just like you said, like using the back of the book, see the answer and work backwards.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I was in college, I was doing the same thing, but we had physics textbooks. And I am notoriously terrible at physics. Yeah, I know I'm a math teacher, but for some reason, I cannot wrap my head around electricity and magnetism for some reason. And I was asking one of my cousins who was doing like mechanical engineering at the time. And I was like, what are some ways that I can get better at this? And he said exactly what you said. It's like, you got textbooks, right? Go in the back of the book, find the answers, and work your way backwards. And I was like, dang, you know what? At that time, I didn't really think about that, but then now I knew.
Yeah.
Going forward, it's a great option.
It works pretty well for academic wise, for sure. I did it for physics all the time too. There's this thing called Chegg, and it was
Oh my God.
a lifesaver.
Chegg, Coursera, Course Hero,
Yeah.
all those ones.
But it's interesting because I feel like a lot of other fields these days, or at least like real life things, like you can't exactly look at the back of the book to figure out how to solve the problem. But at the same time, when we were talking about it, one thing I can relate to it was it's sort of like if you want to build something or create something, because those things have creativity involved, right? And there's no like right answer exactly, but you can always look at an example of someone that has created what you want to create and sort of break down their methods. And that's a similar sort of ideology behind this whole like math thing.
Yeah, no, totally, because that helps kind of round your vision. Like maybe you're not really sure of what I want to design or something, and it's like, well, what's out there right now, right? And
Yeah.
that's like one of the things that we do for our seniors actually, because we have a design capstone, is I try to point them in that direction where it's like, okay, you got some idea, but right now you don't really have a product of what you want to do with said idea that addresses some socio concern or socioeconomic concern or something that can help the community or local community. And I point them in the direction of like, well, that's what the research is, right? You're going to go look at what things are actually out there right now. And well, how can you put your little twist on it, right? I try to push them in that right direction.
Yeah, that's where your originality comes from, is the twist, the chemical reaction, the combination of all the things that you like.
Exactly.
But we've definitely deviated quite far from
I know, I keep thinking about the original question. Like, the original question was misunderstandings.
No, but I enjoyed what came of the first one. Do you have... Hit me with another.
Okay. We are not all-knowing beings as teachers. Like, we can totally make mistakes, and mistakes are okay, you know? That's why we're in school. We're here to learn, right?
Yeah. I think there's this, for sure, like this sort of thought that all students have that, you know, the teacher has to be perfect. The teacher has to give us information that is flawless. Otherwise, they're incapable, or otherwise, like, you know, they're not that great of a teacher or something like that.
Yeah, I've had that experience actually. I have a student currently who is like very blunt with his statements. That I remember when I was checking over his classwork, he's asking for help and whatnot, and he's finished the classwork already, but there's a lot of students kind of grabbing for my attention. I'm kind of roaming around, and all I do is just check one important, like, harder problem. And I'm like, oh, he did it. It's like, oh, you're good. Like, I just checked one and I think you're fine already, because if you knew how to do that one, you should be set for all the others. What I didn't know was that he made a mistake for like one of the other ones. And I remember when we did it on the quiz or something, I think he repeated that mistake and he called it out like, wait a second, but you checked my work and you said I was good. It's like, you're not doing your job as a teacher. And I was like, damn. Like, dang, bro, just because I didn't check that one problem that you got wrong, like, I checked this one and you did this one exactly correct.
Yeah.
And like from then on, it's like kind of like learning these different interactions with the students that I felt, okay, well, I gotta make sure I'm like sometimes 100% with this student, or else he's gonna try and call me out like in that way where you make you feel incompetent or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, an alternative could have been like, let me just check a few of your questions and you can point out which ones you checked. And then, you know, because I guess you can't always tell students, oh, I don't have time to check all of them. I don't know. Yeah,
exactly. So I'm like, Roman, I'm trying to check some, but I'm not check all of them. But now, like, after doing it for a while, like, I have a better understanding of like what all my problems were. Sometimes I'm just like grabbing problems from different spots and just putting them all together for them. But yeah, definitely being a little more prepared goes a long way in those kind of situations.
Yeah. I don't have too many recollections of memories where teachers messed up really badly, or anytime a teacher messed up, it was a pretty small minor issue. So for me personally, I never really saw it as much of a problem.
Yeah, even when I was a student, I didn't feel like it was a problem. It's like, oh, they made a mistake, cool, we corrected it.
Yeah.
And then we just move on with their lives, right? But I was that kind of math kid that would look very, very closely at what the teacher was doing. And it was like the moment they made a mistake, I was like, oh, miss, I think you're missing like a negative over there, and I would be like the one to point it out. And I remember thinking about that moment, and my friends would always give me so much flack for it. Like, it's like, what, why are you like this, like, kind of thing? Or like, why are you pointing out these kind of mistakes and whatnot? Or they always call me out on it. Even my coworkers now, because I point out mistakes on slides when they're presented, like that punctuation's off, you're missing your parenthesis. Like they will like call me on as like, oh, Matthew, did you check the slides beforehand? And they're just like joshing around with me. But it's really funny. But I wondered now, being a teacher, like me calling out a teacher for a mistake like that, how did they feel, you know? And like being a teacher it now and making mistakes and having students call me out on mistakes, I actually feel proud of the student.
That's good.
Like, oh, you want to thank you for calling out my mistake. I really wish you're in period 1 because I made that same mistake in period 1 and you're in period 2, which means I did something wrong in period 1. And I'm going to have to address that tomorrow.
Yeah, that's funny.
I like having them call me out on it.
That's
you
good.
know? And it makes it feel better. Like, you know, you're actually paying attention, right?
Yeah.
That's like a good metric for me is like, oh, you're looking at what I'm doing. But at the same time, I'm making mistakes. That's fine. You know, I blanked on something. Okay. Yeah. Let's move forward from that. Fix the mistake. Cool. Keep it going. Right. I don't feel this like antagonistic feeling like,
That's
oh,
good.
You've wronged me by calling me out. How dare you? No, it's a good thing they called me out.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I remember a lot of times where that's happened, where somebody says like, oh, you forgot the negative or something. It's such an easy mistake to make for math.
Yeah, thank you.
But
negative.
I feel like I never pointed it out because I was the type of student that like slept in class. I didn't actually sleep. It was more like I nodded off and could not pay attention because the whole classroom setting was not really something that worked for me at all. Most of my learning, especially the stuff that involved math and science, were from textbooks. I just like straight up just did the questions, read whatever sections I needed, and yeah.
And you self-studied.
Yeah, I self-studied.
Right?
Like
you
pretty
did it
much
on your own.
Yeah, most of high school and college was just self-studying for me. I would often skip classes in college actually, but I know that's like everyone has a different
model student.
Everyone has a different learning style, so
exactly, that's the point, right? Everyone has their own different learning style. Like previous years, I like to like in my lesson models, like I have like do now like something right at the beginning, like the lesson, it's pretty short, 15 to 20 minutes, and then we have like time for classwork and a lot of my students last year, I remember a group of them would always ask for their classwork with the lesson because they wanted to have it like all side by side and just like be able to do that. Oh, I understand that. They pick it up like much quicker, they're much faster at it, and they just want to be able to do it and get done with it, right?
Yeah,
they didn't have to listen to all the different steps, the different pacing on walking through one line at a time of how to do something.
Yeah,
because they knew how to keep going already. And then like we catered to that.
I feel like I would definitely be one of those students. I'd rather just like give me the homework right now so I can do it.
It's like, can I just have the classroom, please? Like, yeah, sure, here you go.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna like stop you.
And I will say, just for the record, even though I slacked and even though I self-studied and nodded off in class, I was still top 10 in my high school.
And you can do it too, listeners.
Which the high school is pretty big. It's like 714 students.
Oh, dang, yours was huge.
Yeah. So it wasn't like I was a slacker or anything. I just could not learn from the classroom setting.
Yeah. Wow. Not even my school was that big. I think we had like 550 kids, but wow.
Yeah. But anyways, let's continue. Any other misunderstandings?
Oh, showing your work. This one's a very like math and I think like physics specific one or science specific one. You always see it. It's so common in like math worksheets and textbooks, like show your work, blah, blah, blah. And you just feel like, oh, that's a hassle. Or I think sometimes as a student, like, oh, I can do it all in my head and whatnot. And I have certain deals with students who like to do this mental math thing. And I'm like, okay, you can do all the mental math you want. You don't have to show your work. That's totally fine. But I grade them with such scrutiny just to see. I just want to make sure like, okay, can I trust their mental math and whatnot? But with the way I think of showing your work, because some students, you know, it's like a cheating method where they like don't show their work. They look at another person's paper and they just write down the answer. Yeah, I got the answer. And some of the questions are simple enough to do that, right? Like you could do it in your head, if anything. But in my opinion, showing your work isn't so much for you, the student, but it's also like for me to see what they're thinking of. Like, I really want to see what is going on in their mind and where are the numbers coming from. How are they carrying the next numbers into the next line or the variables into the next line? And it's really just to see, like, where are you? How are you doing with this? What are you struggling with? What's a common misconception that if you had, probably so many other students in your classroom also have or are also experiencing?
So it's more so for you to see the process, and if they got something wrong, you know where they got it wrong versus just seeing a wrong answer,
right? Exactly. It's just like, cool, you got it wrong. I have no basis for why you got it wrong. You just did something.
So it's showing your work is almost as much as it is like for them as it is for you. Like it's not just like, like a drag that you have to show the work because otherwise the teacher doesn't trust you. It's not necessarily that. It's also so that if you get it wrong, they can help you.
Yeah, and I don't want them to see it as like busy work, right? And I feel like a lot of times the way I teach it is by showing each and every step. And I let them know that, like, you know what? I'm showing every single step here and you see it, everything.
Yeah.
But you guys are picking up on the pattern that log base 6 of 6 is 1, right? Or something. And then they start to pick up on these, like, you don't always have to show me that log base 6 of 6 is 1, right? I will show it explicitly for those students that do need that kind of help and do need that support. But for some of my students that already pick up on the pattern, they're gone, right? They're getting it already, right? They don't need this kind of hand holding.
Makes sense.
And that's why I push for it.
I do want to ask though, you mentioned that you were creating a final, and I feel like that's something I am very curious about because as a student or someone who was a student, how the heck do teachers create finals? Like, what's the approach? Like, is it just like every other test but with more questions, or is it different?
I think that comes down to like teacher to teacher. I've developed this way that kind of puts students at ease with it because like I have a very specific format of my classworks in class. And what I do is I kind of push this specific format with them. So like they have a study guide that I give them, like a 2-day study guide that kind of goes through different units and whatnot. And I format it in such a way that when they see it again on the final, it looks exactly like the study guide.
Nice.
And it's just like the formatting is everything's the same. All that's changed are the numbers. All the directions are the same. All the help notes, like the little bits of things that I've done, it's all the same. So
you're one of those good teachers that puts what they studied on the study guide in the exam. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, and it helps me format it so I know, like, this is the topic. Here are the directions for that topic. Here are 2 questions for it.
Yeah.
I like to give like 2 questions per topic.
I used to hate it when teachers gave us study guides and like they did not put any questions related to certain sections of the study guide at all, and it was it was like, why did we even study this, like
That was me. That was a mistake I made last year. Last year I was like trying to be like go crazy and be like those questions where they have like Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3, and then it's like it's only for 1 and 2, 1, 2, and 3, 1 only, 2 only, and I was trying all these different ways, like circle which column has the correct thing that format. It's like it was a whole mess. They did terribly because that is not exactly what it looked like on a study guide. It was like whole new test question formats that they're not used to, unless it was like on a standardized test or something.
Yeah.
And they hate standardized tests. But that was how I made the final. All I do is just take very similar skills, but just change the numbers almost, or change the way the fraction looks. And because I'm showing you exactly what skill I want shown in these 2 questions, right? I'm not going to throw some random curveball at you like, oh, imaginary numbers, what now? Like, it's not going to be like that. I try to make it as straightforward as possible so they see it time and time again and they know that kind of routine. Like, I understand sometimes I don't want them to be in the routine, so like maybe I'll change up the problems a little bit so that they have to try and really think about it.
Yeah.
And use a little bit critical thinking skills.
And you also have to cater it towards the AP exam too, right?
Oh yeah, for the AP exam, that's a total different beast. Because like as the AP teachers, we have AP Central, which is just houses every test question for us.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah, we have a whole slew of hundreds, if not thousands, of multiple choice questions and free response questions to choose from. And they're actually, little known secret, they give us the exams that are like official exams. Not the real ones they use that year or something, but past years ones.
Yeah.
Like everyone has access to like the free response ones every year, basically, but they have some that are like what we call secure exams.
Yeah.
And they're like a very, very good test of how students might be doing on the actual one.
Yeah.
And they give us both the multiple choice and free response question. Then we can use those.
That's solid.
But other than that, we choose whatever problems we want. And I try to choose it where I cater different skills that we were taught in the lesson and some more critical thinking skills that, like, if you understood this, might be a stretch, but you should be able to get this one too.
Any other misconceptions students have about the teachers?
Age? I think age might be a random one, because like I think like before the students knew about how old I was, like I remember getting 30 something and feeling the pain in my heart because I'm like, excuse me, we have actual teachers and adults on this staff that are 30 something, if not 40s or 50s, right? But in general, the average age of the school that I teach at is like sub 30, like maybe 25 to 28. Like most of the whole senior team that we have is from 25 to 29 years old.
That's impressive.
And it's just like, we're all young teachers. And I think that sometimes throws students off, which kind of ties back to the, hey, I do things outside of school.
Yeah.
I'm not this homebody. I'm not going to go home, pour myself a drink and just sit there and do nothing, right?
Yeah, they're crazy, man. Like, you don't look over 30.
It's like, it's like, thank you for saying that. I appreciate you. But yeah, it's like a game with them sometimes. It's just like, ooh, how old am I? Like, you guys probably don't know, I'm not that much older than you. Especially if some of them are like 18, even pushing like 19 already.
Yeah.
Like
it's less than 10 years apart.
Yeah, like I just turned 28. And like a couple months ago, I was 27, and we're not that far apart, right? I just have education beyond you at this point, you know?
Yeah.
But sooner or later, you'll be in the same exact position. You'll be the same age, and you'll think, hey, back when I was in high school, and I say this sometimes when I'm telling stories, and it feels so weird. It makes me feel way older. Like when I was your age, not that long ago, but it feels weird to say that as an adult.
Yeah.
But it's like, I have to understand, like, hey, you know what? These are students.
Yeah.
They're still teenagers.
I feel like I couldn't say that. I couldn't say like when I was your age or when I was in school or in high school, because then I would proceed by saying I pretty much just slept in class and stuff. So my advice would be so bad. I would.
Have I got some advice for you?
Read the textbook, kid. Read the textbook.
That's all you need. Just buy the prep book or the textbook and just do it yourself.
Yeah, but are there any last pieces of advice for, I guess, like potential students or even just like parents that of future students that you could offer?
I think this comes to the fact that I'm a younger teacher, but you're not good at cheating, and you are not really slick when you're trying to use your phone. Like I've done this with students before where I'm like, okay, you're using your phone, and I call them out on it, and we have like a whole process of like making sure they don't use their phone again and stuff. But sometimes I just have like, come up here, like come to me, stand next to me, right? And then I will tell the student who is sitting next to that student, pull out your phone, try and hide it from us, and show us what it looks like. And you know, they do the desk thing, they're kind of putting it aligned with the desk, and they put it there, but they're like, it's like, why is your arm in that way? Or they kind of, you can tell when they're gonna go like this, right? They bring their arm back for their pocket, like, oh, I'm gonna use my phone all of a sudden. Or if they had like a Chromebook and they put their phone behind the Chromebook, and I'm like, why are you furiously holding with one hand your Chromebook screen? Oh, I wonder why, right? It's so easy to catch the students sometimes, and it's just so funny catching them in the act, because sometimes they're like, hey, you know what, mister, that's my bad. I'm sorry I tried, you know? But
Right.
it's like so apparent sometimes, and it's really funny catching them in the act, because then it just becomes a little funny moment or funny bantering moment. Like, that's 3 times now I've caught you with your phone,
What do
and
you
I'll say that in
do? What do you
class.
do after you catch them? I'm
Dude,
so curious.
sometimes the other students chime in, and it was like, that was the 5th time already. Like, like I didn't even say that. I was just like, hey, that's another, and then they're like keeping track sometimes. Like, I'm not even the one keeping track, but they are.
Yeah.
So it's a funny experience.
Do you punish them?
That can explain the way we do it at our school. The way we have our system, we have a shout out reminder system. It used to be called the merit demerit system, but it kind of felt really demeaning towards students, and we changed it to the shout outs reminder system. So the reminders is basically like, hey, like, we reminded you of this kind of mistake or this wrongdoing, this kind of off task behavior or being tardy to class and whatnot. And it's a points based system. And so getting shout outs is always like a good thing. We get like merits for the school values and stuff. But the way I run my class is, if I see the phone out once, I'll call it out on you, say, hey, that's your one, right? I'm reminding them that that's their one chance to, like, okay, no more phones, right? You guys stay focused. You're in class right now. You can use it during passing and whatnot. But if they do it again, I'd be like, and that was the second, right? And I just, like, very casually, it's super quick, and it reminds them, like, hey, you know what? That was your second time. That's going to be a reminder, right? And it kind of logs that points for them. And sometimes they just realize, like, you know what? Yeah, that was my bad. You know, that's a mistake that they made on their part. And then we move forward from that, and we just get better. It used to be like a kind of a bad problem that we used to have. And I think it always is a problem at the beginning of the year. As we're kind of learning who each other are and whatnot. And yeah, it gets better. It definitely gets better though. But that's like kind of our punishment system, because accruing too many reminders does lead to like after school detentions and stuff.
I see. That's so interesting, because I feel like when we were in high school, we had phones, but I don't think it was as bad. I feel like people taking out their phones was a rare occasion, at least for my high school. Like,
yeah, no, same for me. Like, when we're in class, like, we just kept it in our pockets and we're just paying attention. It wasn't hard to pay attention at all. It wasn't like, oh, you know, this class is such a drag. Phone. I mean, it was a drag for you because you were asleep and you didn't take out your phone. Like, but I didn't see that as a problem when we were in high school.
Yeah.
Like,
I think there was a class that was just so boring that sometimes I would take out my phone and like play chess on it or something. That was a really big class, but back then I had like a Galaxy S3 or something, super old.
Dang.
And it did not have too much stuff on it. Like, I couldn't do too many things. Web browsing was not like
where it's at today.
Yeah, it was really slow, or I would like never get signal, and basically I would just play like chess or something.
I mean, I actually wonder if you did this too. Did you just download programs and games on your graphing calculator and play it on there instead?
No, I did not.
You did not? Yo, I was playing like Space Invaders and on that thing and what I was doing. So, and now with the calculators, they're in color.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So we have some great screens to be able, and like great processing power on that thing to be able to play games on it. Of course, students aren't doing that because like they're school calculators. They're a school set. They stay at school and they can't bring them home. But I feel like if they could, they'd probably play a ton of games on it.
Yeah. In college, when I actually got a laptop for the first time and then you could bring it into class, that's when I would start mainly journaling while class was going on, and sometimes do other stuff as well. But it was only in classes where laptops were allowed. Some classes, like, nobody had their laptops out, and I didn't want to be that guy, you know?
The odd one out, typing away furiously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never had the habit, actually, of, like, bringing my laptop in undergrad. It just didn't feel necessary. A lot of times I was the one who would sit there and just like listen. Like, it was sometimes even hard to write notes, especially, oh my God, especially when the teacher goes up there or the professor goes up there and is holding the textbook and proceeds to write what's on the textbook.
Right.
And I'm just like, I remember turning to my friends like, is he holding our textbook as he's teaching us? Like, he's teaching us the practice problems right now? Like, you're kidding me, right? Like, do I really need to be here then? And I did not. It was unnecessary to be there.
Precisely. But that's exactly why I skipped some college classes.
Exactly. And it reiterates your point of just read the textbook. You heard it here first, folks.
But I mean, like, it's definitely difficult sometimes because textbooks can be dry, and
for sure.
It's why I feel students expect teachers to be beyond that, or at least like a level above where they can offer some extra insight or
for sure,
energy to the class, to the learning process.
Yeah, and I understand that because it's just like now being a teacher myself, it's like, oh, you know what, like they are having trouble, and I kind of see it, especially because like in my class, especially in the math classes for sure, like I try to have these moments where like the students are essentially like teaching one another, right? Or they're like kind of throwing practice problems at one another. And I saw it today actually, where like they're preparing for their finals and it's in calculus. And this student, he knows the math. He already knows the stuff. I have like no issues with him actually getting like a 5 probably. But he was helping another student practice. But he was basically just like setting up the problem. He writes it on the whiteboard. I'm just sitting there watching them do it. And he just lets her flounder. And I was like, you understand that she doesn't get it. So you can either guide her or we'll be here all day. Right? Like, and he was like, but that's the best part. Like a little sadist or something. I don't know. But like, I was like, as long as you push her in the right direction, kind of help her. It was more like wherever she tries something, he just says like, nope, that's not it. I'm just like, are there teachers like this? Like
he just wants to bask in his competency, the fact that someone else is lower.
Oh my god, it was so funny watching that, but I was just like, dude, she doesn't get it. You're gonna have to push her in the right direction and move her along here so she can actually practice, because she just did like, I don't know. Is it the left side, the right side for the Riemann sums problem? He gave her a Riemann sums problem, and it was just like, yeah, no, she's gonna need a little bit more help. So help push her in the right direction, please.
Not everyone is a good teacher.
Exactly, and that's how I feel about it. It's like it's true. Not everyone is gonna be a good teacher or will push people in the right direction. It's more like a lone wolf in it, and they're gonna be the people who are very, very independent, and that's great. Just like yourself, right? You're very independent. You know how to be a self-starter, do things yourself. But when you ask that one person to try and have another person be a self-starter, it might not go as well as you think.
Definitely. Any other final thoughts on the matter?
So just to kind of circle back to the topic of giving parents advice or future students advice, or parents who have students right now, as like some advice, is do your best as parents to be there for your student. I think a lot of students do feel the pressure of like, hey, you know what, I'm in this on my own and it's all on me, right? But we want to kind of help our students feel that it's not just all on them. Like, that's why we're here as teachers. That's why you're in school. That's why we're here to support you. That's why as teachers, we can be your support network. And it doesn't just stop there at school. It also is at home. And we want parents to really be in the loop. And I think that's one of the good things about our school, that school that I'm at right now, is that we do our best to try and loop in parents as much as we can. Like, of course, in the form of like sometimes grade reports and whatnot, and they get them back and it's like, oh, it's disappointing to see those grades. Of course, that's fine. You know, they're parents, they're students, they're in the learning process. That's why they're at school. They're here to get better. But definitely, like, being there for your kid, being there for your child, and being a part of that support system is what I would say as advice for parents and teacher and future students.
It's good advice. I'm curious to the application of the advice for, I guess, parents who may not fully comprehend what their child is learning. Because I find it difficult to, like what you said, resonated with how I was back then for sure. Because it felt like a independent, on my own type of learning situation all the time. I
totally understand.
maybe the only sense of like camaraderie or like sense of like other people being there were my friends who were also in the same class. And I'm glad that we helped each other out a lot. But for my parents, I feel like they never quite understood what I was learning. So to them, it was see a progress report card. Did you get A's? Oh, you're good. Did you not? You're not good. Luckily for me, I actually never really got bad grades.
I never saw a B in my life. This guy.
I have definitely seen B's in my life. Not in. I've seen one B in high school, and then in college I've seen a lot of B's. So yeah, I've never seen a C in my life. That's
okay. Yeah, I know. You're like, whoa.
That's
okay. Hold on there, man. No C's, okay.
I'm not a straight A student throughout my entire school career. So I definitely understand like struggling, because for sure in college I struggled
of course
in some classes, but there was a lot of pressure, definitely.
Yeah, but on that note, like giving that kind of advice, I'm not asking for like the parents to like, hey, you got to learn calculus as well to help your kid. No. I want you to be there to support your kid. I want you to be there to like, yeah, you're going to get that progress report back like every week, every 2 weeks or whatever. But it's not a moment for you to be like, why didn't you get these passing grades? Why did you get that C? Why did you get that B? Why is that B not an A? That kind of thing. I don't want it to be in that kind of environment, because it feels kind of hostile, you know? I want it to be where the parent is asking like, hey, like, do you know what to do? Like, do you know who to turn to? Do you need me to ask who to turn to? Like, get some contact the school or contact your teacher, your advisor on like what you can do. Like, because sometimes it's like it's easier for parents to make those kind of calls when students are very nervous, they're very shy, they don't have it in them to confront a teacher or reach out. Exactly. And for parents, I feel like that's
100%.
That's like one of their best things that they can do to be supportive. It's not that you have to learn the content with them, but it's that you're helping be their support structure and figuring out, hey, what do we need to do next, and how can we do that together?
Definitely. That's good advice. I like the supportive element of it. And I feel like it's very applicable. There's a lot of, when I was a student, or even when I see my cousins as students, whenever they ask for help, or most of the time they don't ask for help, but like I can see that they need help. And sometimes I do end up helping them because they're comfortable with me as like an older cousin. But at the same time, I can tell that it's like hard for them to ask help, or it's just like not something that they're used to, or they feel this resistance to reaching out for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I can really attest to that. I see it all the time. And the way I've actually brought it up to some of my students is that I told them straight up, like, I think you have a fear of being wrong, or a fear of making a mistake, especially in front of someone who knows their stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And like, it kind of ties into some of our other topics previously, but I think the students are really, really scared or really afraid of being wrong, making that mistake, and just being publicly ridiculed by others. When
public shame.
Yeah, like when they know maybe internally like that's not going to happen, but externally it can't get over that barrier of, I'm going to make a mistake, I'm not going to raise my hand, I'm not going to say anything, I'm not even going to reach out. Maybe I'll figure it out on my own, but what if you don't, right?
Yeah. Or just admitting like you don't understand. Like nobody wants to appear incompetent, right?
Exactly. And that's kind of like one of the things that I see a lot of in my students, that's like, they're like, I need help. And it's like, okay, cool. What do you need help with? And they say everything. And I always tell them, it's like, well, that's not helping any of us right now, right? I need you to pinpoint something, point to something, anything, get us started, right? That way we know where to go from there. And maybe we backtrack a bit, maybe we can move forward. That's totally fine. But you got to point to where we're going to get started. And that's where that's how I do things with my students. But I kind of wanted to bring up a story with one of the students today, actually, when they were doing a study hall time. What student was trying to help her understand integrals, like doing U substitution. And he was pushing her like, hey, why don't you ask Mr. Hu? He's literally right here. He's standing in front of you. Like, just ask him. And I was like, well, what do you need to ask me? Like, what's going on? And she's like, no, I'm fine. I don't need it. It's okay. I'll figure it out. Right? It was just like immediate walls up, closure. I don't want, no, don't help me. Right? But the student just kept pushing her, just like, and she was just like, she was actually welling up tears within. Whoa. Because it's her breaking this wall down to try and reach out just so that she can get help. And I was like, it's okay. Like And I was like, well, which problem are you on right now? And she's like, it doesn't matter, whatever problem. Like, and I was like, okay, how about we just first problem, top the page, right? And she was just like, I only knew how to do this part, where she knew how to do in the U substitution, you set u equals some factor and you take the derivative of it. Like, she only knew that part, but she didn't know what to do next. And it was really eating away at her. And that she said she was going to figure it out. I was like, how about we just walk through it together, right? And I was like, okay, we start with a problem. Well, you know how to select u. Great, take the derivative. And it's like, well, and I just help her with that next step, right? Just that one other step right past what she knows, and she continues on from there. But it was very like hard to see that as a teacher, that like pushing past this barrier to ask for help, for reach out for help, even in the safety of the classroom, even in the safety of another student helping you and kind of pushing you to, hey, why don't you ask Mr. Who that?
Yeah.
And your teacher there willing to help, that was still hard. Right. And I can only imagine how it is for so many other students who are super quiet, super reserved, and aren't willing to do that, or not even have the same support structures to be pushed in that direction.
Yeah. I'm glad it worked out in your case.
Oh yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, I just kept looking at her eyes, because I was just like, I could see the tears welling, and I was like, oh.
Jeez.
It was intense, but in the end, I do think it was a rewarding experience to be able to reach out.
Well, I think that's a good story to end things off with, and just a good lesson overall. I think learning can be like a very difficult experience sometimes for students.
Oh yeah.
But once you sort of gain a sense of wisdom and just experience more things in life, like you start to realize it's okay not to know, and it's okay to reach out and just like ask for help. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Matthew. This was like a very interesting and insightful conversation for sure.
I loved it, honestly. It was very exciting to be talking on here.
All right, we'll see you again.
Perfect. All right. Take care.
Later.